I don't remember eating my first meal, or even first preparing a meal, but I do remember the first time I made a meal with love. I was 19 years old and living on my own when I prepared macaroni casserole for my 4-year-old niece Marissa. I've always had an emotional connection with food. A mother who is tirelessly passionate about preparing food and generously sharing it with others inspired me. And when I left home, I started to use my love for food as a way to connect with people and with places. It is through food that I found a way to, it's in the kitchen where I feel most at home because it's a place where I can be most creative and also where I'm comfortable learning from mistakes. Every once in a while, it is one of these mistakes that results in the best flavors. When I was in high school, I routinely sat in a desk in a long, neat row and was lectured at by a teacher about things I wasn't interested in. I was unengaged, I was disconnected. This, along with being insecure and timid, caused me to take one of the biggest risks in my life. It was March 1997, during my grade 12 year, when I sat down and wrote a letter to my parents explaining that I was dropping out of school and moving out west to Vancouver. I grew up on military bases and happened to be living in Ontario at the time. In the letter, I promised that I would go back to school one day and graduate, which I ended up doing 4 years later. Shortly after, one day my doctor said, "Eric, you've neglected your education for too long." What I didn't write in the letter is that I would one day become a high school teacher. This is where I'm at today. I'm a teacher candidate here at UBC. My focus is to use food as a way to engage students in learning. This involves students learning about food, but more so through food, learning other things. For the 15 years between when I dropped out of school and started this program, I lived in dozens of places throughout Canada and the Netherlands. I wore many different hats. To say that I've had a lot of different jobs is definitely an understatement. I was on a search for empathy. During this time, countless different individuals and experiences inspired me. Allow me to share a few of these with you that shaped my journey to become a teacher and to use my passion for food as an engagement agent. First off, when the time came that I decided I was ready to attend college, I was disappointingly denied admittance. Even after writing an entrance exam, the door remained closed. Eventually, after much determination, I was finally accepted. This became one of the most significant events in my life. Not only was I suddenly able to access higher education, but I had learned that through resilience, I was able to turn obstacles into opportunities. This became a theme of my life, and today is something that I try to share with my students. Shortly after starting my degree here at UBC, I took some time off, and I moved to Nunavut, Canada's Arctic. From the moment I arrived, it became clear to me how connected the community was and the powerful role that food had within this. This is a place where food habits change rapidly, all the way from hunting caribou to buying $26 watermelons. I was given the opportunity to substitute as a social studies teacher. I'll never forget the first day I stood in front of the class and looked out at 20 15-year-olds. I was nervous and naive. On their faces, I saw expressions of boredom, sleepiness, and wandering eyes, just like I once experienced. Of course they were. Like me, there they sat in desks, unengaged, by sitting in long, neat rows being lectured at by a teacher. Except this time, I was the person at the front of the class, looking out at them, teaching them things that they weren't interested in. The first thing I asked them was, "Did you learn about the French Revolution last week?" There was silence. I repeated the question. Again, silence. On the third try, they all yelled, "Yes, yes, yes, we told you 3 times." So I don't understand. And they explained that raising eyebrows is a way of saying yes, and scrunching face is a way of saying no. You see, not only was I ill-prepared to engage students in social studies, but I was also ignorant about Inuit culture. I had failed at teaching, but I was determined to find a way to have a better approach. Who would have known that the solution existed just 4 classrooms down the hall? That everything in my perception changed the day I stepped into the home economics room to observe the class. I was amazed to see students up out of their desks, engaged in hands-on learning about skills that related to their everyday lives and to the culture. This course did not struggle to engage students. In fact, it was entirely based on student engagement with multimodal learning. I had an epiphany that I could teach high school. and do this by teaching the two courses I'm most passionate about, human geography and home economics. At social gatherings ever since, when I'm asked that loaded question, what do you do? I say I'm studying to be a teacher, and I get that typical response. And then I'm asked what grade. When I say high school, often people say, wow, you're brave. The third question, what subject? This is a revelation. When I say home economics and human geography, people often say, wow, that's kind of a strange combination. So strange combination, I take a step back and think, what exactly is strange about this? And I started to realize it's really not that strange at all. In fact, these two courses fit quite nicely together. And from that day onwards, I've been motivated to find a way to develop and facilitate a course that teaches these two subjects as one. Shortly after returning to UBC to complete my BA 4 years ago, I started volunteering with two progressive high school programs here in Vancouver. In fact, the highlight of my undergrad was connecting with the Center for Community Engaged Learning here on campus, and they placed me with the Britannia Homework Club in East Vancouver, a place that is rich in social capital. After tutoring for a year and getting to know students and teachers, I applied for and received a grant to offer a program at Britannia over the summer. This was my golden opportunity, and I used it to put my vision into action by developing a course titled Food Literacy, a hands-on and appetizing course on thinking critically about food. Food literacy is an increasingly popular buzzword today, especially in home economics and food studies circles. It is often defined as understanding the impact of our food choices on health, the environment, and community. One of my goals is to help students become food literate. This involves them learning how to prepare food, eat healthy, read labels, and develop an understanding about the role of nutrients, as well as where and how food is grown and processed, and even how it is transported. In addition, it also teaches students about the social, historical, political, and economic structures and systems that are interwoven with the food system. For 5 weeks during the summer, for 4 hours in each and every day, we went on discoveries of learning. The method of teaching home economics and human geography as one course was put into action. I'll give you some examples. We went on field trips. One day we went to a local supermarket, and I asked the students to count the number of bags of chips and the number of bottles of pop, and compare that with the number of dark leafy green vegetables. They came up with an approximate ratio of 100 to 1. Then I asked them to interpret what some of the causes and consequences of this are by looking at media, marketing, corporations, and so forth, as well as the related health issues. Other days, we had guest speakers. One time, Dr. Bill Reese from here at UBC visited our class and carried dialogue with the students about the role that food has in the ecological footprint model. Now, this course does not require field trips or guest speakers in order to be effective. Each and every ingredient and meal is a potential catalyst for learning. One day we prepared salmon in a quinoa salad and discussed the significance of these two foods with indigenous people in Pacific Northwest and South America, respectively. For salmon, we also looked at the history of the Fraser River, the debate between farmed and wild salmon, the significance of the collapse of the cod fishery on the East Coast, and the role that fishing has in the local economy. Through quinoa, we discussed how Europeans initially dismissed this food in South America, and yet today it's one of the most popular superfoods, or grains, even though it's a seed. And then we looked at how rising food prices have impacted farmers in Bolivia and Peru, and lastly, how marketing and media influences food trends. Throughout the course, students' habits were transformed as a result of working with food. They started showing up early within the first week and would talk about what they prepared for dinner last night or what they watched on TV about food. They also insisted on sitting together around one big table each day to eat lunch. Most significantly, they wanted to give back to the community. It feels good to give back, and this course provided them the opportunity to do so. After all, one of the objectives of this course was to overcome the notion that low socioeconomic status is an impermeable barrier to eating nutritious and delicious food. On the first day, we had a dozen leftover burritos. This was more than we needed, and we needed to find a home for them. So I dropped them off at a local neighborhood shelter. The next day, when I told the students how grateful the shelter was to receive their food, right away they asked, "Can we please make extra today? And can we join you after class in dropping it off?" This became a motivation for them to make exceptional food every single day. They started making these meals with love. Near the end of the week, they were given money to buy food for the food bank based on the knowledge they'd acquired. And again, they insisted on dropping this off themselves because they wanted to see the role that they were having on local food security issues. An offshoot of this course is adventure-based cooking. This is a course I developed with Take a Hike, an alternate program where I've been volunteering for the past few years. We set up some criteria for the students' meals to be nutritious, delicious, efficient, and affordable. The first day, I realized we had a pressing concern. We had one stove and 27 students, 25 who happened to be boys. So we went to the shed and took out the camp stoves and relocated the course to the park. And there on picnic tables, we had our home ec classroom. Engagement skyrocketed, and the need for classroom management plummeted. It was highly successful, especially during the chili cook-off. Another component of this course is students preparing meals for their backcountry trips. We developed 2 more criteria: weight and shelf life. A fellow volunteer taught the students how to dehydrate food, and let's just say they ate remarkably well. Both of these food courses have been successful at engaging students. Certainly, the current popularity of food is partially responsible for this. In Michael Pollan's latest book titled Cooked, he talks about how people are obsessed with food, whether they watch the Food Network, read Bon Appetit or Lucky Peach, or frequent restaurants. Meanwhile, people are cooking at a rate that's the lowest since the mid-1960s, with the average American family spending less than 27 minutes a day preparing food. Food literacy is helping to bridge this disconnect by having students prepare meals each and every class. Now, the goal of the course is not to teach them to be gourmet chefs. Instead, it is to give them the opportunity to be creative and empower them to find something that they are passionate about. If they become excellent cooks, that's a bonus. One of the reasons this course is so transformative is because students are heavily involved in the learning process. They are empowered to take control of their learning. It astonishes me when you take a group of motivated and intelligent youth and tell them that they can decide what they learn, how they will learn it, and so forth. They initially respond as though they are breaking rules. Meanwhile, they are actively learning, becoming independent, and working collaboratively in groups, all skills they require in life. Food literacy is a course that uses, as I said, that it's like a transdisciplinary model of working with students, but more so, it's current with the changes in education today. The way the students learn in the classroom is constantly evolving. Here in British Columbia, the government has recently created the new education plan, and it contains many drastic changes. Here at UBC in the education program, we focus on student-centered, experiential, multimodal, collaborative, and reflective learning. I have been reading about these theories and methods for the past few years, trying to find a way to engage students. After learning all this, I'm not saying that it's valueless, but I've discovered that sometimes engaging students can be as simple as salmon and quinoa. It is my goal to embed food literacy in the curriculum, and my dream to have it as a foundation for an alternate program. Programs that connect youth engagement with food exist throughout the world, and I am inspired both by these programs and the people behind them. I feel fortunate to live and work here in Vancouver, where so many of these programs exist, and to be able to call many of these people my friends. After all, we share common goals of wanting food security for all and the future health of youth. Students want to be engaged, and they want to be unconditionally accepted by the teachers. When I dropped out more than 15 years ago, I was not engaged in learning. This is nobody's fault, but it certainly would have made a difference. After working in Nunavut and at inner city schools, I've discovered that working with students who are often labeled at risk definitely has challenges, but it has far more rewards. We as teachers are at risk of not connecting with these students and missing out on having these courageous, creative, intelligent, and resilient individuals in our classrooms. They have so much to teach us. I would like to leave you with 2 things. The first is to quote David Suzuki, a local environmentalist, and saying that we all live downstream. I think about this when I think about education. We all have a role to play in the education of our youth today, tomorrow, and in the future. Whether we are parents, neighbors, teachers, or even students ourselves, we are all interconnected. The second is that if you're ever at a social gathering and you're passionate about something, and someone says to you, that's kind of a strange idea, I encourage you to take a step back and think, what exactly is strange about it? Because it might just be that by strange, they're using a synonym for unique. As a teacher candidate today, I feel that unique is not necessarily a bad thing.